Hi, welcome to my channel where we question everything. My name is Dela and today we're gonna talk again about why I disagree with everyone. And it doesn't seem to me that the final version was the final version. Unfortunately, I've been listening to my favorite channels, and I'm still hearing the same narrative over and over and over again. It has become so that it sounds more or less similar as the Western narrative is going. Not in terms of context, but it has been going into a circular narrative, which means although the facts change on the ground, the pro-Russians are still pro-Russians and firmly believe in everything that they say and make excuses for events that are not favorable to the Russians. So what I would like to do today is to talk about a little bit of discrepancies that I hear and the questions that arise, and which is nobody really addressing. So let's start with the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines. You know, even Putin has said he knows who the culprits are, and it is based on his question on who benefits. And the indicated culprits is the Americans. It doesn't seem to me that they are looking at any other possible culprits. And I have made a video of possible culprits, and they will also benefit of the destruction of the Nord Stream pipeline. But it seems to me nobody is even talking about that. I will leave a link to that video in the description. So, unless the Americans are so full of themselves and so full of hubris, if that's a correct English name or description, that they can believe that they can blow up the Nord Stream pipelines, although they are the 99.999 indicated by circumstances the culprits, but they think they can get away with that. And would they then even consider doing such an action? I mean, if every finger will point at me, would I dare to execute that type of crime? And think about the consequences, that if it is ever found out that the Americans have done that, then what do you think the Germans will do if they realize that the person they are depending on and supporting, and on whose behalf they're actually destroying their own economy, is stabbing in the back and doing such a nasty bit of piece of work? So, you know, one has to think about this, the consequences. And then the narrative goes on and you just says, yeah, who benefits the most? And if it's true, it's Americans. And the reason why they give that is because the Americans want to sell their natural gas and LNGs to Europe at these huge, enormous prices and huge profits. And the narrative is saying that they can supply Europe with the gas. No, they cannot. If you look at the experts that are in the gas industry, the natural gas, don't get confused with the American version of what gas means. For them, it means petrol. They cannot supply the volume that the Russians have supplied, even if they sell all their gas to them. But one also has to remember that America has all the other clients as well, and he has contractual obligations to them, number one. And number two is that the Americans don't care much about friendship. It's all about self-interest. If they can find a client which pays a higher price, then they will deliver to him and not to America, to Europe. You can see how they treat the British. The British are the lapdogs, doing everything the Americans are doing, but the Americans don't even want to give them a beneficial trade agreement and put them in the rear of the queue. And then one has to think about the technology of fracking. And if you read about the fracking industry in America, you will notice that there's only one basin still really producing the gas. Okay, they are getting gas from oil platforms as well, which is part of oil recovery or mining or extraction. But the fracking side is reaching the end of their lifespan. And we all know that fracking wells have a short lifespan. And although the volume is very much at the beginning, it quickly tapers off. And then new wells have to be drilled. And if you read the relevant news articles, a number of rigs and oils and drilling rigs are not increasing, they are actually decreasing in America. So this whole story of narrative of the Americans supplying the European with their gas supplies is a fallacy. But still I hear the same narrative over and over and over again without discussing any of the other items. And then we stick to the Nord Stream pipeline, the sabotage of that. So, and let's ask then another question. You should all know by now that there are 4 pipelines, and 3 have been destroyed. 1 is still intact. And the question now arises, why is that one still intact? Now you can provide 2 theories for that. Probably more, but I will only concentrate on 2. The one is that the one was deliberately not destroyed in order to not create chaos and at least allow some form of backup tool for the Germans to obtain gas from Russia. Or you can ask the question, all 4 pipelines were, call it, mined or explosive put on them, and one of the charges failed. That is a question you could also ask yourself. And is it credible? Yes, it is credible. Because you have to ask yourself, why are the Danes and the Swedes refusing the Russian investigation team to come to site and do their own investigation? Why are they not sharing any information with the Russians? It is the property of Russia. It is in international waters. Yes, it's economic zones of Sweden and Danish, but it's still international waters. So the Russians have all rights to do it. But now they have to apply for a permit, and it's going to take them 20 days. Now, then we look at the evidence. It is an underwater explosion, crime scene if you want to call it. And there are currents flowing in that region, which are fairly fast. Well, that's what I'm being told. Whether it's true or it's not, I don't know. But it's not a crime scene that's on the ground that cannot be disturbed by natural factors. So the question is, what evidence can really be found at the site? Usually when it's overground, you can find a piece of a detonator, you can find a piece of this, a piece of that, and you can picture it together, and you can usually determine where this explosive has come from. You can look at the root, the burned area, and there's always something that's not burned, and you can recover it, and you can determine what type of explosive was used, and where it was manufactured, and etc., etc. But this is underwater. So this is a hell of a lot more difficult. So my alternative argument or proposal is that the Danish and the Swedish people are removing the failed explosive charges that were placed on the 4th pipeline. in order to conceal evidence, is that the right word, or hide the evidence? Now, I've discussed it before. The intelligence service will find out who was a culprit and who has done it. Whether we will ever know, that is a completely different issue. Hopefully, somebody will leak us some information, but it will be a seriously implication for Germany and seriously food for thought on how they're going to react on that evidence. Well, that was about what I'm talking about, the Nord Stream. So then let's look about this narrative of the Ukrainian usage of 6,000 artillery rounds per day. Brian Berletic likes to talk about that. Even Alexander talks about that. And the production capability of America is, they're looking now for new suppliers of 36,000 rounds. Or was it 12,000 rounds? I'm not totally sure now. And that these rounds will not be sufficient for Ukrainian, and that they will fire all those rounds based on the 6,000 rounds per day. Those supplied rounds will only last them 2 to 6 days. So the question really asks, where do these guys get their number from? Oh yes, it was a Ukrainian military commander who said they are using about 6,000 rounds. But that's where the question comes in. Does Ukraine only have 155 millimeter artillery pieces? No. No. An army has multiple artillery systems and caliber, yeah, that's the right word, calibers, and they all have different capabilities, and you need a different type of calibers because the situation might demand it. I will actually do a video on the type of artillery systems available in the Ukrainian conflict, but unfortunately you have to wait and subscribe to my channel and then be notified when I do that video. But the point here is that the narrative of 6,000 is still being presented, and the manufacturing capability is still being presented, and the Americans are running out of ammo, and oh shit, no, the Ukrainians are not going to have enough ammo. This is unrealistic fantasy talk. So, let's get us to the next point. Oh, before I actually forget. So, in my reading up, I found an article of 2017 where South Africa, the country where I'm reporting from, South Africa, and I remember I was involved in the arms industry. Yeah? In fact, I did work on the rocket-assisted 155, and I did on the base bleed. We call it base bleed. The other one is called flop. It's not that I say anything that is not public knowledge, but I worked on the flop system, which is the rocket-assisted 155, and the base bleed, which is the intermediate extension range of the 155. But in any case, these systems have been qualified by our defense industry for a NATO member, and it was accepted, and an order was placed for an unknown NATO country, which was completed in 2019. So, if everybody considers business is business, then South Africa can supply and manufacture a lot of 155 artillery rounds for America to be supplied, or any other NATO country, for Ukraine. Just to say, gives you some background, some more information. And then I would like to look at the Crimean bridge attack. And we can call it a sabotage. Well, firstly, if you haven't seen the videos right by now, and you haven't read up about it now, it was a truck bomb. And the truck was driving on the outside lane of the bridge. So there are two double-lane road bridges sections, and then there is a double-lane railway section. And the truck was driving on the outside lane of the outside double road section. Now, any person with a little bit of technical expertise or capability would realize that you cannot destroy a bridge on the outside lane of a double road bridge span and think you're going to destroy the other double roadway and a double railway, which is a little bit more elevated than the road sections. So, in my opinion, the intention was never, ever to blow up the bridge. But we hear the same narrative over and over and over again that the Ukrainians have done it and they have failed. So one has to ask your question, why did the Ukrainians then do it? Were they motivated or inspired by their British and American handlers? Did they say they would have a huge propaganda effect? Did they say the Russians would retaliate massively, which they did, and then gave them an opportunity to blame Russia for attacking civilian infrastructure, which they did? So what is the real propaganda value of this attack? And in my opinion, it's huge. It's being actually underestimated. But naturally, pro-Russian punters make excuses and laugh at the effort of the Ukrainians. And then I come to another question about the same issue about the bridge. The Russians, even Putin, are talking about a terrorist attack. Terrorism operation. Is it a terrorist and terrorism operation? Well, yes and no. You see, at the initial of the SMO, we are talking about only legal concepts. At the start of the SMO, Russia did not invade Ukraine. Don't make a mistake about it. They didn't invade Ukraine. They acknowledged, they recognized the two republics, the Donetsk and Luhansk, as independent states, and that is important to remember. Then these states asked for assistance from Russia. Then Russia said, yes, we will help you and help you, support you. And as I have said many times before, the Russians were in Ukraine as a support function. Everybody on the pro-Russian side has always talked about that the fighting is being done by the Donbas militia, the Chechens, the Wagner group, and the volunteers. Nobody has ever really said the Russians fought. Yes, they did it as a collective. But they never really talked about the Russians. It later became a blurred line. But it was always the Donbas militia that did the fighting. And I argued in my previous video that the operation was very similar to the Russian operation in Syria. The Syrian government went to Russia and asked for assistance. The Russia provided that assistance in the form of strategic and military or military strategies, air support, air defenses, and so forth and so forth. But they never controlled the Syrian army. The Syrian army was always in charge of the operations. And the Russian would either agree with that and say they will take part or they will not take part. But it was a support function. And the same principle applied to the SMO. Now, this makes a huge difference. So when Ukraine went to the Russian border and fired into Russia, that was actually an attack on Russia. And if you want to consider that the car bombing in Moscow was a Ukrainian act, you can say that was terrorism because Russia was not at war with Ukraine. In the same sense that America is not at war with Russia. They are supporting Ukraine as Russia is supporting the Donbass. So all these actions before the referendum was an act of terrorism. Unfortunately, or fortunately, however you see it, there was now a referendum, and the Donbass two province republics and two oblasts of Ukraine joined Russia and are now part of Russian territory. And now Russia is at war with Ukraine. Doesn't matter if they declared it or not, it's irrelevant. They are now at war with Ukraine. So any military action of Ukraine behind enemy lines is not a terrorist attack, but a sabotage attack. Doesn't matter how you look at it. It's a state of war now. And therefore you cannot have acts of terrorism. Unless you want to say the American bombing of Ukraine, of Iraq, of Afghanistan, or Libya, or Syria are all acts of terrorism. When they destroyed the infrastructure and killed civilians, which they call conveniently collateral damage and stuff like that, then America is a terrorist state as well. You're going to have to be consistent in your definition. But the military operation has changed now from a supportive functions to a warlike functions. And everybody is surprised that General Armageddon is now a single commander taking control of all the actions in Ukraine. Yes, why are you surprised with that? Like I said, the SMO has now changed to a full state of war. And therefore, the Russian military has now taken command, and the Russians are now controlled by a single general who takes control of all the armies and all the soldiers, even the Donbass militia, which are now regulars in the Russian army. And you see the difference. But nobody is really talking about this. I don't understand why. So let's talk about the other narrative that I'm constantly hearing, in which I have a big dispute with Brian Berletic. The Slovenian T-55 tanks that are being donated to Ukraine. And I actually made a video of that, and I will leave the link in the description that you can watch. It's again, doing a narrative without doing the proper homework. Brian consistently states these T-55s will have no effect on the battlefield, and they are ancient pieces, and they should be belong in a museum. But when in May, end of May and start of June, the T-66 were found on the Russian side, and the Western people were laughing oh, look at the Russians, they're running out of tanks, they have to use the old derelict type of museum pieces. How can they use the T-62? And then every pro-Panther Russian said, no. These T-62s are just there as support function, and they're going to stay in the background and patrol basically and secure the areas that have already been conquered by the Russian collective. Maybe that's a better word for that. That was the excuse. And now the T-55 is actually being laughed at by the pro-Russian guys. And nobody does a little bit of Googling to see what the T-55 is and the T-65 is. And you will actually find that they are the same tank. The only difference is the size of the main gun. That's basically the only change that has happened there. But the T-55 given by the Slovenians are not T-55s anymore. They have been upgraded so much that they are a new tank, or not a new tank, a tank built on the skeleton of a T-55. And their gun structure and the electronics built on that, and they have reactive armor, they are a competitive to the T-72 used by the Russians. The main gun can kill a T-72. And apart from that, like I said in another video when I discussed the matter, was that I would use old tanks. If they can run and if they can shoot, I will use them because they are mobile artillery pieces. And they are armored, and they can go into places where you only have small arms fire, unless there is an anti-tank weapon in the vicinity. And that is precisely what the Russians have actually done with their T-62s. Use them as long-range, supportive artillery. Because they can fire high explosive rounds and they can destroy fortified bunkers and stuff like that with their high velocity rounds. So forget about this narrative. Subscribe to my channel. I will talk more about these weapon systems, which everybody is sort of misunderstanding, because nobody makes the effort to do a little bit of research. And then we talk about, there are so many questions and I can speak the whole day. The thing is that, so in the last 3 weeks we had the Ukrainian offense. I refuse to call it a counter offense. It's an offense. And they've gained huge amounts of territory. And every pro-Russian pundit tells you these gains by the Ukrainians are negligible. It will have no impact on the war or the final result. And the only thing that Ukrainians have done is they've conquered empty space and towns, small towns. They haven't conquered any cities of whatever. This is all a waste of manpower, and the Ukrainians are suffering huge casualties. Well, the problem about huge casualties, which I have also discussed in another video, is a relative concept. If you look at the Russian Ministry of Defense reports, they kill about 100 people here and 100 people there, and the Ukrainians are losing, and say, let's make it a number, 500 men. That's a huge losses on an offense, which are, in any case, you lose a lot of assets, tanks and manpower. For me, losing significant people is when you lose 2,000-3,000 men in an operation on a section of the front, not on the whole front. That is significant. So unless we agree what means significant losses, which none of the guys have actually supportive documents, all articles, or whatever other information. It's all talk without background. But the question arises, what have the Russians done at the beginning of the SMO? Initially, there was a front line, which was more or less, this is just a rough number, call it 50% of the Donetsk Oblast was occupied by the militia, the rebels, whatever you want to call them. And let's say 60% of Lugansk was controlled by the rebels. And then the Russians came in and they went to the front and supported the attacks of the Donbass militia, and they conquered the rest of Lugansk and only parts of Donetsk. What the Russians have done is they have entered Ukraine from Crimea and then quickly occupied Kherson and Sabotage with very little resistance. It was a chop operation. Yes, there is Mariupol, but I'm not going to address that. So now I constantly hear this narrative that the Russians have conquered 20% of Ukraine within 6 months. That is what everybody tells the story. No. Half of that 20% was already occupied by the rebels, the two Donbass republics. And the offensive the Russians did on Kherson and Sabotage were also open space, and quickly with no resistance they conquered those spaces. The same as the Ukrainians are doing now. So from a realistic point of view, living in reality, how much did the Russian military really conquer in the last 8 months? Same as the Ukrainians are doing now. But it's being ignored, and it's being obfuscated, or whatever is the English name for that. Think about this. So, that's why I say, stop talking the same narrative and give the Ukrainians credit where credit is due. There are people fighting and there are people dying. This is not a joke. This is not a PC game. People are dying. You are losing your brother. You are losing your son. You are losing your father. You are losing your husband. Or those people are maimed, which is even worse. Alright, so then we come to another question. And this is the narrative of the Russians winning the war. Do I agree with that? Well, from a military point of view, definitely. It is David fighting against Goliath. Goliath? Okay. But in any case, you know what I mean. And then this time Goliath will win. There's no medical stone that's going to do it. If you just look at the situation as it is, you look at the military equipment of Russians, you look at the military equipment of Ukraine, looking at the manpower, the reserves, and so on, the Ukrainians cannot win. It's a matter of pure numbers. But nobody asks the question that if this war continues and Russia advances, which we all expect will happen very soon or in the winter, and the Ukrainians will retreat, nobody asks the questions, what will the West and NATO do? Will they abandon Ukraine? Or will they enter Ukraine? Will they change from a supportive function to an active function? Yes, we hear a lot about what different people say and politicians say and threatening and so on, but well, people of the know should discuss it because I don't really know about that. But you know, it doesn't mean that the war has to end. And then we have this other sort of other story that goes with it, and that's a nuclear option. No, stop talking about nuclear war. It's not going to happen. Why? Nobody is so self-destructive and so stupid to press a button, except if you are a psychopath. Yes, there are some psychopaths. But there will be sane people behind them that will say no. Now I'm going to tell a little bit of story, which I read probably 25 years ago or 30 years ago. I don't even know if the sources were right or if my story is right. But the Americans apparently have done a test drill of the nuclear submarine commanders. Maybe somebody can help me out on that. And the Americans simulated that the Russians were attacking with atomic bombs the Russians, America. And America was sending the commands through to the submarine commanders. You have to position in this position, you have to position your submarine in that position, and fire all your atomic missiles. And the commanders believed it was not a drill, it was reality. And in the end of the day, every single commander failed to push the button. Nobody did it. Then there's the Russian submarine commander. I'm not totally sure about that story because I forgot to read it before I actually started this video. But the same, there was going something wrong and he was supposed to press a button, and then luckily he didn't press a button and there was no nuclear war. And I think the Americans did the same with their silos. They also tested them in. There was actually a movie made about that, I believe. But there were two people had to turn the key, and then the one guy refused. And the other guy said, you have to do it, and all drama. But in any case, I think the silo-based atomic missiles have the same problem. The guys didn't want to push the button. Because they asked themselves, why? And if you didn't know it, the guy that actually, the pilot of the, hey, what was the plane called that dropped the bomb on Hiroshima? Nagasaki? Golden Gay, something like that? Can't remember. In any case, he committed suicide after he delivered that bomb. Because he couldn't live with himself on how many people has killed due to his actions. So, pressing a red button is not an easy thing. Don't make any mistake about that. But there are other options available. The Russian nuclear doctrine is clearly described. They will only fire when they are fired upon. And they will only fire when their total existence is under threat. And this last one I actually would put a little bit of a question mark about that. The Americans have a similar doctrine. They have went a little bit haywire and said, yeah, they can use tactical nukes and first strike and so on and so forth. But you can also read what their doctrine is. So, if I was NATO and this whole war is an existential threat to me, then what I would do is I will enter the war and I will try to push back the Russians up to a certain point till the border of Russia. And I won't move further than that, because if I move further than that, I became a threat to Moscow and the Russian nuclear doctrine will be activated. The one I put a question mark on it. So this is an option that the NATO can do. The question is whether they will do it or not. That's experts must express their opinions on that. I am not in a position of doing that. But the point here is that using tactical nuclears, bombing Ukraine, pressing the button on Europe, pressing the button on America, forget about that. This is all fear-mongering. Unless you want to live in a story where you believe everybody's a fanatic or a psychopath. Then I want to express again, and I have expressed already in previous videos, and that is the Russian Ministry of Defense daily report. At the bottom of it's like a checklist, and so like I said before. You go down and say all the stuff is destroyed and destroyed and destroyed, and you get to the last paragraph, usually it says to you, 240 or 250 fixed-wing aircraft destroyed. So many tanks destroyed. So many artillery pieces destroyed. I know they grouped them together, but let's forget about that. The crucial one is actually the one that gives you the tip, that stands out about all these items, and which gives you the necessary doubt to question that narrative, is the amount of fixed aircraft. Of course, according to reports, I think the Ukrainians have about 140 something fixed aircraft fighters type of things. And in this report, every second day, the report states we shot down a MiG-29 or a Su-24, or so, sometimes a Su-25. But more or less every second day they shoot down an aircraft. But nobody questions these numbers. Nobody discusses it. The point here is that at the beginning of the war, the Russians have fired off all these missiles, and then the narrative in the West started to be spread of the Russians have run out of missiles. The Russians, we have destroyed so many tanks, the Russians have lost so many tanks that they have to bring out the T-62. The Russians can't fire any, they run out of ammo and all this artillery rounds and so on. And then the pro-Russian punters would say, no, this is nonsense. This is all nonsense. And now the narrative has changed. It has been reversed. So the pro-Russian punters are now saying Ukraine has run out of ammo, it has run out of tanks, it has, in any case, no aircraft, no aviation. It's losing men, a huge amount of men, but they never specify. Significant losses on the battlefield. Everything is in vain, will be reversed, and so forth. Then you have to ask the question, how is it possible that the Russians have destroyed, according to their daily report, so many aircrafts, which they're not supposed to, it's double the amount they initially started with, and suddenly they sort of appear and they shoot another one down. So that means the Ukrainian, either the Russians are lying or the Ukrainians still have aircraft. The Ukrainians are attacking in the offense. The Russians, according to the report, are shooting down some tanks, destroying tanks, so many of theirs. But then the next wave comes and there's another couple of tanks, which means the Ukrainians are not running out of tanks. They still have some tanks. Who knows how many they have? I don't know. Do you know? Nobody really knows. To stop this narrative. So, yes, I don't know. So another narrative. So, and Brian also likes to do that. So what the West has done is they send up all the, okay, Ukraine firstly, supposedly, have used up all the Soviet equipment, tanks, aircraft, so on. Now, how do you rearm them? So NATO or the West decided, okay, all these Soviet new countries, Poland and so on, should give their Soviet-era weapons to Ukraine, which they did partially. But they're running out of that as well, according to the narrative. So what did the West do then? Okay, so they sent all their surplus equipment that is either getting old or is in storage or it's an old version or reached the end of its life because no armament lasts forever. In any case, send that to Ukraine. But then they said, oh, but the Russians are not able to handle this equipment. Let's call it the Javelins and the NN-Law and the Stingers and all the other guys that we don't usually talk about, but they do get supplied other Western weapons. Well, they're not being able to help to work it. But how did the Ukrainians, were they able to use all the surplus weapons from the Western nations? Weren't those also Soviet-era weapons, or was it NATO weapons? No, it was NATO weapons, but they still operated and they still gave it away. And now they don't want to give them the new weapons. But the question arises again in the narrative. 8 years, the coup happened in 2014, so for 8 years, NATO trained and equipped the Ukrainian army to the point which is being said that the Ukrainians are the best trained and experienced NATO troops. Isn't that what we all saying? So if I'm a NATO trained for 8 years, then surely I must be able to operate an Abrams tank or a modern, maybe not aircraft, they wouldn't allow that, but maybe, I don't know. Helicopters, other weapon systems. Are you not saying that these are NATO trained soldiers, Ukrainian soldiers? If you say yes, then why can't they operate the weapons? And if you say no, then who they all lied all these years? It's the same narrative where we talk about on the one side, the Ukrainian army and government is controlled by the military advisors and experts and from the West, and Britain and America is calling the shots in Kiev and so on. And when we talk about that, when it comes to the blame game, then we blame Zelensky and the Ukrainian commanders. You've got to be consistent. You either choose the one narrative, you choose the other narrative, but then you don't mix them because they are not mixable. It's either the one or the other. And then we talk about the economic crisis in Europe. And oh man. Germany gonna be destroyed. Germany is gonna be deindustrialized. Germany is gonna fall. Germany. As far as I know, the Eurozones consist out of 27 or is it 30 members? Second biggest industrial country is Italy. Nobody talks about the deindustrialization of Italy. Nobody talks about the high debt that Italy has compared to Germany. Nobody talks about the criticality or no, the critical state of the Italian banks compared to the state of the German banks. Germany is a powerhouse supposed to be of the EU and finances everything else together with France. So if Germany falls, then what about Poland and Hungary and Spain and Portugal and Greece, and what is going to happen to them? Netherlands, Brussels, Denmark. What is going to happen to all Swiss, Austria? What is going to happen to them? Nobody talks about the other countries, except always Germany. Is that all that people can talk about? Then we go look at the gas, natural gas, energy. I've talked about that and I made a different video as well. It's not about the natural gas. It's a question of energy and the price of energy, which is determined, unfortunately, that's how the system works, on the price of natural gas. But here is a nice graph of the gas prices for the last 2-3 months. And you can see there's a huge drop in the gas prices. So my question is, why do we have a drop in gas prices when gas is such a critical item? And it's going to lead to the financial collapse of Germany. I mean, the punters are already talking that companies going to leave Germany and go to America because there is a better energy. Who says that? When is that going to happen? How long is it going to take? You think I pack my suitcase and then I go to America? No. All those machineries, all those factories have to move, and it's going to take a year, 2 years, more. And then you have the American gas price. We're talking about petrol and diesel. In America, how high is it there? And then you have the inflation in America. And do you really think that America, moving your company from Germany to America, is going to be beneficial to you? It's going to be a better option. I don't know, but they are experts. But that's not the narrative. The narrative is consistently the same bullshit. And then, as last item, like I said, I'm going to stop now, is this comparison of this war with the American wars in the Middle East. And they're constantly saying that it's not the same, and Americans have fought poor people with Kalashnikovs and sandals and so on. And we wonder, is that not right? So they criticize that comparison. But in the same sense, they try to use the Second World War as an example, and would like to compare that to the military or the SMO, which is now a full war, in my opinion, with the Second World War, and that is all a fight. Don't the people realize that technology has changed, strategy has changed, situation has changed? Wars are not fought in the same way. You now have long-distance missiles. That changes the game. You have electronic warfare, changes the game. You have satellites and UAVs, changes the game. You have anti-artillery systems, changes the game. You cannot compare these wars. So I would like to ask these punters, stop doing it. I mean, another video, I will probably address it because, like I said, I'm constantly disagreeing with Alexander now lately. So when they were talking about France, and they were talking about Macron, and Macron is not at the goal, And in de Gaulle's time, there were huge riots and so forth. But de Gaulle had the support of the military, and the protests could stop. Now we have the Macron, and he doesn't have the support of the military. And if the riots go on as they are going now, then, oh shit. Well, firstly, what the hell does the military have to do with the president or prime minister? Times have changed. In the 60s and now, it's two different type of situations. World has changed, rules have changed. Does Alexandra now think there's going to be a military coup in France? Come on. Not with this wokeness and stuff like that. And you understand what I'm trying to say? History is history. It doesn't repeat itself, like they say. But it's sure like things are more or less happening in the same process. There's another saying to it that I can't remember. Now, I'm asking again very nicely, please subscribe to my channel because I would like to do a backup on Odyssey and I need 100 subscribers. No, I'm just joking. So, anyway guys, that's my story for today. I'm going to stop here, otherwise I'm going to talk the whole day. And if you like what you heard, press the like button, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends that we all think a little bit different and question the narrative, whether it's on the left side, on the right side. But I hate to listen always to the same crap over and over and over again. And when I have to do that, then I'm not going to follow that person anymore. So until next time, cheers.